My name is Sarah, and I'm 54 years old. I had lived a predictable life until one unexpected moment shattered my understanding of love and family. It all started on a quiet, rainy Thursday morning. I was in my pajamas, barely awake, man, when my son knocked on the door. You won't believe what happened next. The rain was relentless that morning, beating against my windows like it was trying to punish the earth itself. I remember standing in my kitchen, still in my worn cotton pajamas, the ones with the faded floral pattern that I should have thrown away years ago. My hair was a mess, uncombed, a mild. I didn't care. There was no one to see me anyway. I was sipping my tea, Earl Grey, watching the raindrops race down the glass when I heard it. The knock. Sharp, urgent, unexpected. My heart jumped, not in excitement, but in that primal way it does when your routine is interrupted. Who comes calling at 7:30 in the morning on a Thursday? I assumed it was a delivery, maybe something I'd forgotten I ordered during one of those late-night online shopping binges. But when I opened that door, my entire world tilted on its axis. There stood Jonathan, my son, drenched to the bone. Water dripped from his hair, his jacket, pooling at his feet on my doorstep. He looked at me with eyes I hadn't seen since he was a child, eyes filled with something I couldn't quite name. Fear, desperation, loneliness, all of it, all at once. My 32-year-old son, who lives 3 hours away in the city, who barely calls, who certainly never shows up unannounced. What the hell was he doing here to say, Jonathan? I said, my voice cracking with confusion and immediate maternal concern. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, rain streaming down his face like tears. His phone was clutched in his hand, knuckles white from gripping it so tightly. I didn't wait for an explanation. I grabbed his arm, pulled him inside, felt the cold wetness of his jacket against my skin. Get in here, I said, trying to sound calm when my heart was racing. You're soaked through. But something in his eyes told me this wasn't just about the rain. He stood in my entryway, water dripping onto my hardwood floors, and he didn't even take off his shoes. Jonathan always takes off his shoes. Always. That's when I knew, really knew, something was catastrophically wrong. Sit down, I told him, guiding him to the couch like he was a lost child and not a grown man with a career and a partner and a life I barely recognized anymore. I wrapped a blanket around his shoulders, felt how his body was shaking. Was it the cold, or was it something deeper? I made him tea, my hands trembling as I poured it. My mind was racing through every possible scenario. Was Elena hurt? Was he hurt? Had something terrible happened? When I handed him the mug, our fingers touched, and I felt it. That electric current of shared pain, mother to son, to human. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw my own brokenness reflected back. This wasn't about a simple visit. Mom, he started, then stopped. The word hung in the air between us, heavy with everything unsaid. I sat next to him, still in my ridiculous pajamas, my uncombed hair probably standing on end, and I waited. I've learned that sometimes the best thing you can do is just wait, just be present, just exist in the silence until the other person is ready. The rain continued its assault on the windows, nature's soundtrack to whatever confession was coming. Have you ever had a moment where you were caught off guard by someone you love? I'd love to hear about it. I had a fight with Elena, Jonathan finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. But it wasn't just a fight. I could tell. This was something that had been building, festering, rotting beneath the surface of their relationship for God knows how long. It's not working, Mom, he continued, and now his hands were shaking so badly he had to set down the tea. I don't think it's ever really worked, and I don't know if I can keep pretending anymore. Pretending. That word hit me like a physical blow, because I knew exactly what he meant. I'd pretended for 22 years in my marriage to his father, pretended I was happy, Pretended I didn't feel like I was slowly disappearing. Pretended that being a wife and mother was enough, when deep down I knew I was losing myself piece by piece, day by day, year by year. And now, here was my son, telling me he'd inherited my curse. The curse of living for everyone else, while slowly dying inside. "Tell me," I said, reaching out to take his hand. Our fingers intertwined, and something shifted between us. Jonathan looked at our joined hands, then back at my face. "I feel like I'm living someone else's life," he said, and his voice cracked with the weight of that admission. "Elena wants marriage, kids, a house in the suburbs with a white picket fence and a golden retriever." He laughed, but it was a bitter, broken sound. "And I keep saying yes, keep nodding along, keep planning this future that feels like someone else's dream, not mine." I squeezed his hand tighter. "What do you want, Jonathan?" He looked at me like I'd asked him to explain quantum physics. "I don't know," he whispered, and tears finally started falling. "That's the worst part, Mom. I don't even know who I am anymore, what I want, what makes me happy." I felt my own tears building, hot and furious behind my eyes, because I understood. God, how I understood. "Do you know how long it took me to figure that out after your father and I divorced?" I asked, my voice rough with emotion. "How long?" "I'm still figuring it out, and I'm 54 years old." The truth of that statement hung between us like a ghost. Jonathan pulled his hand away, ran it through his wet hair, leaving it standing in chaotic spikes. "I came here because," he started, then stopped. "Because what?" "Because you're the only person who's ever been honest about this," he said, looking at me with those desperate eyes. "Everyone else tells me to just make it work, to compromise, to be grateful I found someone who loves me." I felt anger rising in my chest, hot and violent. "Fuck that," I said, and Jonathan's eyes widened at my language. I never swear in front of my children, but this moment demanded it. "Fuck that noise about being grateful for crumbs," I continued, standing up now, pacing. "You know what being grateful for crumbs got me? 22 years of slow suffocation, of wondering who I might have been if I'd had the courage to actually live." My voice was rising, all the pain and anger I'd buried for years suddenly erupting. I woke up every morning next to a man who loved me, and I felt nothing but this crushing weight of obligation and duty and the knowledge that I was wasting my one precious life. Jonathan was staring at me, really seeing me, maybe for the first time. Not as his mother, but as a human being who'd suffered. "Why didn't you leave sooner?" he asked, so quietly I almost didn't hear it over the rain. I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. "Fear," I said simply. "Fear of being alone. Fear of hurting you and your sister. Fear of what people would think. Fear of not knowing who I was without the roles I'd been playing. But you did leave eventually." "Yes, and it nearly destroyed me." I looked at him then. Really looked at him. This beautiful man I'd brought into the world. But staying would have destroyed me completely. The silence that followed was different now. Not uncomfortable, but charged with shared understanding. "How did you know it was time?" Jonathan asked. I closed my eyes, remembering. I was standing in the kitchen, much like this morning, and your father was talking about his golf game, and I realized I'd stopped listening months ago, maybe years ago. My voice dropped to a whisper, and I looked at him, this good man who'd never hit me, never cheated, never done anything except be exactly who he'd always been, and I felt nothing but resentment. That was the moment I knew. I was resenting him for my own choices, I continued, feeling the old shame creeping back. And that's when I understood this wasn't his fault. It was mine for staying when I knew it was wrong. Jonathan was nodding now, tears streaming down his face. Elena isn't a bad person, he said. I know. She deserves someone who wants the same thing she wants. Yes, and I deserve... His voice broke. You deserve to live authentically, I finished for him. I reached for his hand again, held it between both of mine. Listen to me, Jonathan. Whatever you decide, whether you stay or go, make sure you're doing it because it's what you truly want, not because it's easier, not because you're afraid, not because you think you owe it to anyone. He was sobbing now, full, shaking sobs. I pulled him into my arms, this grown man, and held him like I used to when he was small, Nam. I'm so scared, Mom, he whispered against my shoulder. I know, baby, I know. Fear is how we know we're still alive, still capable of change. We sat like that for a long time, mother and son, both of us broken in our own ways, both of us trying to find the courage to be whole. The rain started to soften outside, going from aggressive to gentle. Jonathan pulled back, wiped his eyes, tried to smile. I must look like a mess, he said. You look human, I replied. That's more honest than most people ever manage. He laughed, a real laugh this time, small but genuine. And in that moment, I saw hope. What are you going to do? I asked. He was quiet for a moment, thinking. I'm going to talk to Elena. Really talk to her. Not the surface-level bullshit we've been doing. I nodded. And I'm going to be honest. About where I am. About my doubts. About everything. That's brave. It's terrifying. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is admit we're terrified. Jonathan stood up, the blanket falling from his shoulders. He looked different somehow, still troubled, but more grounded, more himself. Thank you, Mom, he said, and the gratitude in his voice made my throat tight. For what? For not telling me what to do, for not making me feel weak, for just... He paused, searching for words, for just being real with me. I stood too, straightened my ridiculous pajamas, ran a hand through my wild hair. That's the only thing I know how to be anymore. We stood there in my living room, two people who'd spent too long pretending, too long living for everyone else, and for the first time in years, maybe ever, I felt truly seen by my son, not as a mother, not as a role, but as a person, flawed and struggling and trying her best to figure out this mess we call life. You know what the crazy thing is? I said. What? I thought I was alone in this feeling, this sense of being lost in my own life. But we're never as alone as we think. Jonathan moved toward the door, checked his phone. I should go, he said. Elena's probably worried. Call her from here, I suggested. Let her know you're okay, then take your time driving back. He nodded, stepped into the hallway, dialed. I could hear his voice, softer now, telling her he was at his mom's, that he needed to think, that they needed to talk, really talk. When he came back, he looked lighter somehow, like confessing had lifted some invisible weight. She said she's been feeling it too, he told me, something like wonder in his voice. The disconnect, the sense that we're going through the motions. Sometimes we need someone else to name the thing we've been too afraid to acknowledge, I said. He hugged me then, not the desperate clutch from earlier, but something gentler, more equal. I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. And I meant it. Not out of obligation, but from a deep, genuine place. After he left, I stood at the window, watching his car disappear down the rain-soaked street. The house felt different now, not emptier but fuller somehow, like his visit had left an imprint, a reminder that connection isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to sit in the questions together. I looked down at myself, still in my ridiculous pajamas, hair still uncombed, makeup free and completely exposed, and for once, I didn't feel the need to apologize for it. I made myself fresh tea, sat back down on the couch where Jonathan had been. The blanket still carried his scent, rain and cologne and something uniquely him. I thought about all the years I'd spent being what everyone needed me to be into. The perfect wife, keeping a clean house, cooking nutritious meals, supporting my husband's career, the perfect mother, attending every school event, volunteering for every committee, putting my children's needs above my own, the perfect friend, always available, always supportive, never burdening anyone with my own struggles. And where had it gotten me? Divorced at 52, living alone, trying to remember who I was before I became everyone's everything. But you know what? I wouldn't change it. Not the divorce, not the pain, not the years of feeling lost. Because without all of that, I wouldn't have been able to offer Jonathan what he needed this morning. Not advice, not solutions, just honest, raw understanding. The thing they don't tell you about living authentically is how terrifying it is. Every day, I wake up and have to make choices based on what I actually want, not what I think I should want. Some days, I don't even know what I want. And that's okay too. I'm learning that uncertainty isn't weakness, it's just being human. We're all making this up as we go along, pretending we have it figured out, when none of us really do. I thought about Elena, this woman I barely know, who's probably sitting in their apartment right now, scared and confused at us, wondering what went wrong. And I felt for her, deeply. Because she's probably been playing a role too, the perfect girlfriend, planning the perfect future, ignoring her own doubts because that's what you're supposed to do when you find someone who loves you. We do this to ourselves, all of us. We perform these elaborate charades, convinced that if we just try hard enough and want it bad enough, we can make the wrong thing right. But some things aren't meant to be fixed. I picked up my phone, scrolled through old photos. There was one from my wedding day, me in my white dress, smiling at the camera, looking so young and hopeful. Did I love him then? I thought I did. But maybe I just loved the idea of being loved, of being chosen, of not being alone. And maybe that's not enough. Maybe we deserve more than just not being alone. Maybe we deserve to feel fully alive. Another photo. Jonathan as a toddler, gap-toothed and grinning. When did he learn to hide his feelings? When did he start performing happiness instead of feeling it? Was it from watching me? The thought made me nauseous. Had I taught my children, through my own example, that love meant sacrifice, that being good meant being silent about your own needs? God, I hope not. But maybe this morning changed something. Maybe Jonathan will make different choices, braver choices than I did. Maybe he'll learn earlier than I did that you can't build a life on should and supposed to. Or maybe he won't. Maybe he'll stay with Elena, work through it, find a way to make it work. And that's okay too, as long as he's doing it consciously, not out of fear or obligation. The prison isn't the relationship, it's the pretending. I stood up, walked to the window again. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving everything washed clean and glistening. My reflection stared back at me from the glass, a 54-year-old woman in pajamas, alone, but not lonely. And I smiled at her. This woman I'm still getting to know. "We did good today," I said out loud. Because we did. We showed up honestly. And sometimes that's all we can do. I thought about what comes next. For me, for Jonathan, for all of us stumbling through this messy, complicated thing called life. There are no guarantees, no promises that honesty will make things easier. In fact, it usually makes things harder, at least at first. But hard doesn't mean wrong. Sometimes the right path is the one that scares us most. Sometimes growth feels like falling apart. I made a decision then, standing there in my living room, still in my ridiculous pajamas. I'm going to call my daughter tonight, really talk to her, not the usual surface-level chat about her job and the weather. I'm going to ask her if she's happy, truly happy, or if she's performing happiness like I did for so many years, and whatever she says, I'm going to listen without judgment, without advice, without trying to fix anything. Because that's what Jonathan needed from me, and maybe that's what we all need from each other. The morning stretched ahead, full of possibility and uncertainty in equal measure. I could clean the house, finally shower, and get dressed in real clothes and be productive. Or I could sit here a while longer in my pajamas, drinking tea, processing everything that just happened. I chose the latter, because sometimes the most productive thing we can do is absolutely nothing. At 54 years old, I'm finally learning that connection isn't about perfection. It's not about having your life together or knowing all the answers or being strong all the time. It's about being willing to show up, messy and uncertain, and say, "I don't know either, but we can figure it out together." It's about allowing yourself to be seen, really seen, in all your broken, beautiful humanity. And that's terrifying, but it's also the only way to truly live. My son came to my door this morning, drenched and desperate, and I didn't have any wisdom to offer. No solutions, no roadmap, just my own story, my own pain, my own ongoing struggle to live authentically. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was exactly what he needed. Sometimes we don't need someone to fix us. We just need someone to say, "Me too." The unexpected knock on my door this morning changed something. Not everything. I'm not naive enough to think one conversation can heal decades of learned behavior. But something shifted between Jonathan and me, within myself. A reminder that vulnerability isn't weakness. That admitting you're lost doesn't make you a failure. That sometimes the bravest thing you can say is, "I don't know." I don't know what will happen with Jonathan and Elena. I don't know if he'll find the courage to leave or the wisdom to stay. I don't know if my daughter is happy or if she's been hiding her pain the way I hid mine. I don't even know what I'm doing with my own life half the time. But I'm learning to be okay with not knowing. Because here's the truth they don't tell you. Life isn't a problem to be solved. It's a mystery to be lived. And the sooner we stop pretending we have it all figured out, the sooner we can actually start living. Really living. Not performing, not pretending, not slowly dying inside while convincing everyone we're fine. I finished my tea, now cold, and set the cup down. Looked around my small house, my quiet life, my uncertain future, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Gratitude. Not for the pain, not for the years I lost, not for the mistakes I made, but for this moment, right now, sitting in my pajamas on a Thursday morning, having just helped my son in the only way I know how, by being honest about my own broken journey. That's all we can do, any of us. Show up honestly, share our stories, hold space for each other's pain, and trust that somehow in ways we can't predict or control, it will be enough. Not perfect, never perfect, but real and true and enough. I'm 54 years old. I live alone. I'm still figuring out who I am. And this morning, for the first time in a long time, I felt truly connected to another human being, not because we solved anything, but because we were honest with each other. And in a world full of performance and pretense, that honesty was revolutionary. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever felt lost in your own life, if you're trying to find the courage to live authentically, know that you're not alone. We're all stumbling through this together, trying to figure it out, making mistakes and occasionally getting it right. And that's exactly as it should be.